Next on Currents News, teenagers are caught on camera igniting a gasoline fire inside church grounds. It's not the first time that flames have threatened to destroy the Queen's Parish. President Trump's tax returns are closer than ever to becoming public in a case that could wind up at the Supreme Court. At the Pope's historic Amazon Summit, women are front and center today. They want to vote. We have an exclusive report from Rome. Plus, the Mother Cabrini statue furor sparks a new response from City Hall. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Tamara Lane. New York City cops are on the hunt tonight for vandals playing with fire. A group of teenagers who set off a blaze next to a Catholic academy in Queens, at a parish that knows the dangers of fire. Currents News' Emily Druby reports from Corona.
A chilling scene caught on camera, teens setting a gas-fueled fire on the side of a school. It happened at Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Academy and Parish in Corona, Queens. Father RODEN explaining how around 1 a.m. the teens walked onto church property, pried open the lock on this shed, and stole several gas canisters. The teens making a rag pile next to the school, dousing it with the fuel and setting it all on fire.
It was scary that it was against the school wall. That wouldn't burn, but down below in the window is an oil tank.
Father RODEN thankful the tank didn't explode, angry over the break-in, but also worried over what could have happened.
Standing next to a roaring bonfire with a can of gasoline in his hand. You know, what in the world? He could have blown himself up. He could have been killed. That was chilling to me.
There was no lasting damage from the fire. Police are now searching for the suspects who took off with the gas cans in hand.
I hope it never happens again. Somebody needs to sit down with them.
This isn't the first fire to happen at this parish. Back in 2015, a massive inferno engulfed the church, destroying the organ and much of the roof. That fire was accidental. It left a big void for parishioners like Jacqueline ZARUMA.
When the fire happened, it broke my heart. It broke everybody's heart because we all love the parish.
Jacqueline on hand for the church's rededication in 2016 after Our Lady of Sorrows was restored. With that history, parishioners are wary after the latest incident.
We come over here every Sunday to hear, and here that is sad.
Mother Clara Maria de la Cruz, a nun who works in faith formation for the parish, says despite the scary incident, they know where to put their faith.
We know that God can protect us.
In Corona, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The cops want to catch the vandals before they strike again and do something worse. They're asking for help identifying the teens. If you know anything, call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS. Deadly wildfires are raging out of control at this hour in California. The blazes are burning even though the state's largest utility deliberately shut off power as a prevention measure. Kelly Smoot reports the very latest.
These weather conditions are significant.
Wildfires and the threat of wildfires has California residents.
I've never been so terrified in my whole life.
And officials on high alert throughout the state.
We are definitely in a window where fire activity is taking place.
In Southern California, the Saddle Ridge fire exploded Thursday night just north of Los Angeles and continues to grow.
We've calculated that the fire is moving at a rate of 800 acres per hour.
Around 100,000 people in the surrounding neighborhoods are under mandatory evacuation orders. The fire has already destroyed dozens of homes in the area. About 70 miles east of LA, the Sandalwood fire also broke out Thursday, burning hundreds of acres. And in Northern California,
all of our lights went out.
Utility company Pacific Gas and Electric had to apologize over its controversial decision to preemptively cut power to hundreds of thousands of customers this week in an effort to prevent a wildfire.
We simply could not continue to run parts of this system given the risk to public safety.
Earlier this year, PG&E reached a settlement for its role in the 2018 Camp Fire, saying it was probable the fire was sparked after a power line touched nearby trees. The fire was the deadliest in California history. California officials do not want to repeat.
We've been able to stave off some of the worst as it relates to wildfires, but we're not out of the woods.
Kelly Smoot, Currents News.
Now for the very latest in the impeachment battle being fought on Capitol Hill. The former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, who was yanked from her post, testified today. Marie Yovanovitch reportedly told lawmakers that President Trump pressed the State Department to oust her. She was pulled from her job in May. House Democrats launched the impeachment inquiry after Trump talked with Ukraine's president about investigating Joe Biden and his son. The president's tax returns could wind up in the hands of Democrats in Congress. Trump's accountants are being ordered by a federal appeals court to hand over 8 years of documents to a House committee. The president's lawyers are accusing the Democrats of conducting a witch hunt. The attorneys could appeal the case to the Supreme Court. The University of Notre Dame will host the first presidential debate of the 2020 election. The clash between the Republican and Democratic candidates will be on September 29th. The Notre Dame campus is adjacent to South Bend, Indiana, where candidate Pete Buttigieg is mayor. 2 more presidential debates will take place at the University of Michigan and Belmont University in Nashville. There will be 1 vice presidential debate, and that'll occur at the University of Utah. Now for other news out of Indiana. New discoveries are being reported tonight in the case of the doctor who kept the remains of aborted babies. After George Crawford died last month, his family found the preserved remains of more than 2,000 unborn children in the doctor's home. He operated 3 clinics in Indiana until his license was revoked. Now, the state's attorney general is reporting additional human remains have been found in 8 cars that Crawford owned. Sins against nature should be confessed by Catholics during the sacrament of reconciliation. That's what Brazilian Archbishop Pedro Bitro told journalists this morning at the historic summit on the Amazon. He spoke during the day's press conference at the Vatican, but the main focus of the briefing was on the role of women religious. Melissa BUTZ reports from Rome.
Inside the meeting hall for the Amazon Synod, there are 35 female participants. One religious sister spoke to journalists today during the briefing, expressing their desire for more leadership positions within the church. At the conclusion of the first week of the Amazon Synod, women are speaking out. One of the female religious participants working in Peru says they are seeking equality, both inside the church and the Synod Hall. Sister Birgit Weiler says since religious men are able to vote, religious women should too.
There is no real reason why not, because when the brethren can vote, well, women religious are equal. Both have votes and are not ordained. So really it would be good.
She believes it is especially important for the Synod on the Amazon, an area where Catholicism is majority run by women due to the priest shortage. To her, voting signifies a desire to participate in the church's formative decisions.
Pope Francis already in the last Synod made it possible, saying it's not necessary that only the ordination to priesthood to be able to vote when you have participated fully in the whole process of sharing faith, of discerning together.
Yet in the first week of the Synod, Sister Birgit says she's found an open attitude inside the Synod Hall.
We experience that we are really accepted as part of the group. There is not a clerical attitude. There's a lot of freedom of speech, and it is a beautiful experience really to discern together.
She assured women are not interested in a power struggle, but equality. This doesn't necessarily mean ordination, but rather leadership positions in different ministries. Despite her desire for more, she expressed her gratitude at the steps already taken to recognize women within the church, and she really wanted to honor those, most especially taken by Pope Francis. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
The latest now on Turkey's invasion of Syria, where the humanitarian crisis grows more severe every hour. The endless bombardment of the Kurdish-held territory in the northern part of Syria is spreading panic and turmoil. As many as 100,000 civilians are running for their lives. On the third day of the military operation, Turkish forces are driving deeper into Syria. President Trump is threatening to slap sanctions on Turkey if they target religious minorities. The Archbishop of Aleppo in Syria, Jean-Clement Gimbart, is condemning the invasion, saying he fears there will be a slaughter of many innocent deaths. Church leaders worry the fighting will reduce the already dwindling Christian population in Syria even more. Archbishop Gimbart said the Kurds, who had been American allies in wiping out ISIS, will fight until the end. There's a lot more news headed your way. The latest on the Mother Cabrini controversy and a new approach from City Hall. Bishop DIMARZIO is moments away. He's talking about the day that is dear to all Italian Americans. Overcoming anxiety and how a Catholic academy is making a difference. There's news tonight about Mother Cabrini. There may be a city statue for her after all. New York State Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis says that the mayor's office is going to consider the saint for a monument when the new round of selections are made. Up until now, the city refused to build her a statue, even though she won a citywide poll to honor women in a landslide. Meanwhile, Bishop DIMARZIO and a Mother Cabrini statue will parade up Fifth Avenue on Monday, Columbus Day. They'll be on the Brooklyn Diocese float. The bishop's leading a popular campaign to celebrate the patroness of immigrants. He's also taking part in the Columbus Day Parade to celebrate his Italian roots and the great contributions Italian Americans have made to the diocese and the country. He's with Ed Wilkinson. Ed?
Thank you. Bishop DIMARZIO is with us. This is Columbus Day weekend, Bishop, and we have the big parade over in Manhattan on Monday, and we always take part in it. Why is it important to you as an Italian to take part in the Columbus Day parade?
Well, Columbus Day is a day that Italian Americans can look to their own heritage, recognizing Columbus is kind of a symbol of it. Discovered America, maligned in some ways afterwards for different things that attributed to him. I think that's a mistake. But again, it's a time of celebrating the immigration here of a large number of Italian immigrants. 20 million immigrants came from Italy at the beginning of the century, turn of the century. So it's something we look back on and recognize that our forefathers came here in that way.
Yeah. Where do you trace your own Italian roots to?
Well, actually 4 different towns in Italy, but the south of Italy. My father's father came from Campobasso near there, and that's where the name comes from, DIMARZIO. And my grandmother came from Naples, his wife, right from the city of Naples. I've been visited, place where she was born, and been there, cousins still. And then the other 2, my maternal grandparents, they came from Avellino and Salerno, but towns that are on the close to one another in 2 different provinces. So they all came to the United States as young people and married here.
Now, you've been back to Italy. Do you still have relatives back there?
I do, yes. I have 2 relatives on my father's side, still have people in Italy.
Don't want to stereotype people, but they say there are traits that are specific to each ethnicity. What would you say are some of the specific traits of Italian people have?
They like to eat. Clearly, the food is part of the culture. And other things, music, art, all this thing. But food is a big part of the Italian culture. That's
Do you have a favorite food?
Well, different kinds of pasta. I mean, that's kind of, it goes without saying.
Yeah. Sometimes people get upset because we think there'll be stereotypes like organized crime, and you see movies like The Godfather and all Italians. And the Governor Cuomo used to get upset very much about that. Is that a fair criticism?
Yeah, I would be upset too. I think when you're characterizing any group by the misfits, in a sense, or whatever group it is, I mean, you go from the specific to the general, from the to make that generalizing something. That's not logical. That's not what you have to do.
Yeah, you grew up in an Italian home. You spoke Italian at home.
Yeah, sure. My grandparents. We lived with my grandparents. So
did you live in an Italian neighborhood?
Pretty much Italian neighborhood. It was like a little village in some ways, that people knew one another. They knew them way back. They knew the grandparents. So it wasn't like you could do something and not be found out. There was always somebody watching, and they knew who you belonged to. And So that was kind of the neighborhood.
What are some of the customs that would be common to an Italian parish?
Well, the veneration of the saints, the feast, outdoor feast, that seemed to be, again, connected with the veneration of the saints, very characteristic of their faith. That's the saints have saved us. You know, they're the ones that they look for that intercession. Each town had their patron saint, and they carry that here from Italy to the United States to have a feast in honor of them, brings people together, that shows their solidarity. So that's basically really one of the great characteristics of Italian Catholics.
Well, happy Columbus Day, Bishop, and we'll be with you in the parade on Monday. That'll be a lot of fun. And now it's back to you at the news desk.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio. Have a great Columbus Day weekend. The bishop is also spearheading a drive to erect a new statue of Mother Cabrini in Brooklyn. He's encouraging Catholics in the diocese to voluntarily pitch in to build the new monument, hopefully in front of Borough Hall. Contributions are being accepted through the Catholic Foundation for Brooklyn and Queens at cfbq.org/Cabrini statue. There's new information tonight about the toll stress is taking on Americans. The numbers are going up. 46.6 Americans struggle with stress, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. Money and work are the biggest factors contributing to the rise in anxiety. For the younger generation, social media is a big contributor to their stress levels. Currents News' Michelle Powers found out how online pressure is affecting young women and what a Catholic Academy is doing to help. We take another look at that report.
Clutched in the hand of nearly every teen is a smartphone, buzzing, beeping, and blinking with notifications.
Adults and my parents, they didn't grow up with it, so they don't really know about this pressure.
Just a freshman, Caitlin Chesley says her anxiety is debilitating.
I try to post pictures of myself.
One of the biggest causes, her generation's version of a diary, social media.
You see these photos every day. It's like, this is what a female should look like.
Perfect lighting in all their pictures.
Instagram models and Snapchat sex symbols flood the feeds of most high school girls. Females posing, filtering, and even photoshopping themselves to complete a look that's both unbelievably pleasing and unnatural.
I wish that I was so comfortable to the point where I could just have a free feed, like a free Instagram.
But that's not the case for Ashley Jordan Matthews. She won't post a picture of herself unfiltered. In fact, she hardly posts any pictures at all.
My chest would feel tight and stuff like that, and I breathe heavy.
Ashley's first panic attack in middle school was spurred by not fitting in with that idea of perfection. She's not the only one. Researchers say people who spend more time on social media are more likely to be sad or depressed, especially teenage girls. They're twice as likely to have anxiety over the technology than boys.
So mine are kind of green, and then I started doing blue.
It's a trend their school psychologist, Christina Sama Balmerito, notices, but she says the device is perpetually attached to their hand, and all of its addictions are only part of the problem.
Expectations that maybe families have for their children, or just the children themselves are becoming more perfectionists.
In an age of unprecedented girl power, Christina says young women are striving for everything and anything, to the point of obsessing over the slightest setbacks or mistakes, literally trying to make every version, every image of themselves, online and off, perfection.
Because I'm first generation, so even more pressure from my parents, and then making sure I don't disappoint them, or doing everything right.
It's a lot of self-pressure just to kind of be the best person I can possibly be.
These ladies feel pressure to be it all because they can. That striving for greatness impresses their principal.
Pressures of society are there, and we're not going backwards. So I think the idea is to empower ourselves to deal with them.
Now sit quietly for a moment.
That's why the Mary Louis Academy students now meditate over the public address system, once a week, school-wide, for 10 minutes.
Now is when they learn how to kind of build a toolkit on how to handle certain experiences that they're going to deal with in life.
Students say the silence and breathing techniques are working, helping to reduce their stress, improve their mental health, and put down their phones.
Just sitting there and kind of just letting it all go and
having like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to myself.
The exercises aim to help the girls appreciate all they have already accomplished and prepare them to take on their next battle.
And above all, you are loved.
Remembering they are enough, not as social media models, but as children of God.
To know when there is pressure, to then go inside and find that place of quiet, to find that place of empowerment, to find that place that says we are loved.
With that, no obstacle is too big. In Jamaica Estates, Michelle Powers, Currents News.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is this year's winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. He's being recognized today for his peacemaking efforts with Eritrea. Recently, Pope Francis praised the Ethiopian for ending 20 years of warfare and for restoring diplomatic relations between the two countries. The Holy Father said Ahmed opened new opportunities for the region to enjoy security and stability. Still to come on Currents News, advice for the heart from Bernie Sanders. And new saints will rise high this weekend. We'll tell you all about them. Bernie Sanders is offering advice tonight that's good for everyone. The presidential candidate suffered a heart attack on the campaign trail last week. Now he wants people to learn from his mistakes.
I was more tired than I usually have been. Had more trouble sleeping than ordinarily. Occasionally I'd be up there at the podium and I'd feel a little bit unsteady. And you know, one time I was just lifting, literally holding the mic up to my arm, and my arm hurt. Really? Up to my mouth, and my arm hurt. And I should have paid more attention to those symptoms. So I hope that people learn from my mistake.
The Vermont senator is going to slow down for a few days while he recovers. Then he says he'll be ready to, quote, go full blast. Finally tonight, the church is getting ready for a great Sunday at the Vatican. Pope Francis is canonizing new saints. Melissa BUTZ is back now with a preview of the joyous occasion.
The tapestries of the faces of the 5 new saints Pope Francis will name on October 13th already adorn the facade of St. Peter's Basilica. Each of these future saints bear very different stories. One of them is Cardinal John Henry Newman. The famous intellectual and theologian was baptized Anglican, but decided to be received in the Catholic Church at age 45. He became a priest and worked for Catholics' rights in England. With him will be canonized 4 women, among them a Brazilian, Irma Dulce. Sister Dulce died in 1992. Her canonization is the 3rd fastest in history. Her spirit of service resulted in her nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1988. Many compare her to Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Also to be canonized is Roman religious Giuseppina Vanini, co-founder of the Congregation of the Daughters of St. Camillus. She's known for her witness of charity toward the sick, poor, and imprisoned. Sister Miriam Teresa Chiramel will also be added to the list of new saints. She was born in India and founded the Congregation of the Sisters of the Holy Family in Thrissur. They're dedicated to serving the most marginalized. She bore the stigmata, a sign of the Passion of the Lord. Marguerite Bays, the seamstress who also bore the stigmata, will be also declared a saint. This Swiss Franciscan dedicated her life to the apostolate and to catechesis. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
That is Currents News. I'm Tamara Lane. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.